Hi there everyone and welcome once again to the TrainAid HQ. My name is Nick and in today's video we're of course looking at the Level 4 Certificate in Education and Training, and we are going to be looking at Unit 6, Inclusive Practice. Okay, so this is our assignment support video, okay, and please do watch along to find out how to answer our Unit 6 for the Level 4 course. In terms of the assignment, okay, we're looking for roughly 2,000 to 3,000 words. You can of course write more than that in terms of the content. Do include a minimum of 4 references. We of course advise using the Level 4 Angravels textbook, and you can of course write in the first or the third person as well. You can include your recent teaching examples or any future teaching practice examples as well within this assignment, so lots of examples. Of course, you can include any photos, images and screenshots to develop your point within your assignment. Please do send your assignment into the marking team, cet@train-aid.co.uk, who will review your assignment within 5 working days and they'll provide you with constructive feedback. Okay, we're going to look at the very first question, and that is analyze factors that influence learning. Okay, so this assignment looks at inclusive practice, and we are looking at how to promote an inclusive teaching environment so everyone feels included. Okay, your less able learners, how can you support them? And also, how do you stretch and challenge your most able learners to make sure that they're engaged as well? So to start off with, we would like for you to explain your own definition of inclusion. So what does it mean to you? Okay, how do you promote inclusive practice within your own teaching and training? So perhaps start off with 1 or 2 lines here. What does inclusive practice mean to you? Furthermore, how do others define inclusion? You can of course include quotes from Angravels, also Tomlinson as well. And how does that connect with your own definition? Furthermore, we would like for you to set the scene. So when teaching a new class, what different factors do you need to consider to promote inclusive teaching? So think about your learners, their personalities, their backgrounds, all of those things, okay? What do you stem from an initial assessment? Okay, what factors do you consider after the initial assessment? Okay, could it be personable factors? Okay, how could personal factors influence your teaching? This could be the learner's personality, their motivation and experiences. Okay, so do personal factors ever influence your teaching? You might see a learner who's quite advanced, okay, who you think, wow, this is going to be a learner who I'm going to be sort of implementing stretch and challenging activities. Or they could be quite a shy and introverted learner. So you're thinking, how am I going to promote their self-esteem? Okay, how are we going to build their confidence up? So all of those factors are sort of focused on personable factors. Explain also social factors as well that could influence learning. So again, sort of the learner's self-esteem, their confidence, relationships. Okay, so once again, sort of stemming from personality, it could be sort of social factors as well. Okay, again, within sort of teaching, it could be that learners are sitting together in friendship groups, but as a teacher you might decide to separate and to ensure that they're working with different learners in non-friendship pairs and groups. Again, it's promoting teamwork, self-esteem, all of those key factors there. You can also talk about cultural factors as well. So it could be if you know that a learner is perhaps religious, there could also be perhaps a language barrier there. Okay, so thinking about how you can support your learners following initial assessment, perhaps just speaking to them, how can you support them, okay, throughout the learning process. And there's also finally cognitive factors as well. Okay, it could be the learner's writing speed, attention spans, processing speed. Is that going to help you to perhaps think about the activities that you're going to be sort of delivering? Okay, do you have to speed up your teaching pace? Do you have to cut activities short? Okay, do you have to make them simpler to understand? So think about the level of learners that you are teaching and how is that going to work for you. Also, you could also define physical and also sensory factors as well. Okay, so think about the learner's physical abilities. Okay, do you need to adapt perhaps resources in any way to make your teaching more inclusive? And also sensory factors. Can perhaps all learners perhaps see the board? Can you promote VARC? And also sort of hearing and touch. Does any learner perhaps have an impairment that you do need to be aware of? What ways that you can perhaps adapt your teaching and learning approaches there? So we're thinking about how to be an inclusive practitioner here. Okay, are there any ways that you promote inclusive practice? Are there any ways in which you perhaps sort of change your teaching techniques to promote inclusion? We're looking for roughly 500 to 1,000 words for this initial question. Okay, so we're just going to move on now. We are going to be looking at our next section, which is to explain the impact of policy and regulatory frameworks on inclusive practice. Okay, so from assignment 1, we looked at legislation, regulation and codes of practice. And if you want to, you can use those same legislations and codes of practice from unit 1 if you wish for this assignment answer. So we'd like for you to think about all of these laws, these legislations, and how they are used to promote inclusive practice. So starting off, why are regulatory frameworks, legislations, and codes of practice important to your teaching practice? Okay, so they might, for teachers and for learners, is to set sort of clear expectations, what's required of teachers and also learners. But of course with teachers, it's very much to be inclusive, okay, to make sure that learners are catered for and to be challenged within the teaching environment. So we are thinking about 3 to 4 different policies. Okay, so policies, again, you could include any 4 legislations or regulations or codes of practice. And how do they promote inclusion within your teaching practice? Okay, so again, we're thinking about how can we promote this legislation and with inclusion. Okay, so for example, it could be health and safety. How do you ensure all of your learners are safe? Okay, it could be ensuring that you have enough PPE for all of your learners to be included, they are safe. Okay, it could be that the Equality Act, we are promoting that. It could be perhaps having signed agreements of the Equality Act on the wall. It could be ground rules. All of those things are going to promote equality that way. So all learners are included within the learning process. They're not discriminated against. So we're thinking about how can we promote these policies with an angle of inclusive practice. So how can we promote this to all of our learners? Okay. So thinking about explaining the policy, why is it relevant? And also, why are these so important for promoting inclusion? So we're reflecting on a minimum of 4. You can, of course, use the Unit 1 work previously, but we are focusing on promoting inclusion there. Okay, we're just going to move on to our next criteria, analyse roles and responsibilities relating to inclusive practice. So very similar with this format to this question. Okay, so you can use the 5 roles and 5 responsibilities from Unit 1. You can transfer them across, but for each role and for each responsibility, we'd like for you to say, how does this promote inclusion? Okay, so how are you perhaps a motivator? Okay, and how do you sort of challenge every learner? Okay, what techniques do you use to get the best out of every learner? How do you keep them all motivated, for example? Okay, in terms of responsibilities, health and safety, duty of care, how do you ensure that all of your learners are safe and secure? Perhaps being approachable and welcoming to your lesson, perhaps saying hello and welcome to perhaps all of your learners, and that shows that you are inclusive in that responsibility as well. Okay. So in terms of word count, we're looking for roughly 500 to 1,000 words here. And as I said, you can of course use those previous assignment questions from Unit 1. We are just now going to look at the next assignment questions, analyse how to create and maintain an inclusive learning environment. So we looked at roles, responsibilities, legislation, and now we're looking at the ways that you promote inclusive practice in your day-to-day teaching. So you can talk about initial assessment, so perhaps explain the ways that you promote inclusion that way. Stretch and challenge activities, seating plans, how do they promote inclusion? Okay, perhaps you might mix up your seating plan to get learners to work with different groups of learners. Okay, that's promoting inclusion. Knowing your learners and asking them questions, perhaps personalised questions, scaffolding questions, to make sure they're all included within the group. Okay, open and nominated questions depending on their level and also their confidence as well. Furthermore, you could also perhaps include support classes or catch-up sessions. That way it's promoting inclusion. If anyone's missed any work, you can spend your time with them to make sure they get up to speed. Furthermore, signposting learners to different organisations and also support staff as well. Okay, so for this assignment question, perhaps reflect on 3 or 4 different methods on how you promote and maintain an inclusive teaching and learning atmosphere as well. So 3 or 4 methods of techniques or what's worked for you. Our final question, okay, is to evaluate your own inclusive practice. And here we'd like for you to be honest. We'd like for you to say what methods have worked well, okay, for you and your learners, okay? So think about your strengths as a teacher in promoting inclusion. So think about all the good practice that you do, perhaps your questioning skills, your approach, organisation, perhaps creating seating plans. It could be signposting learners, all of those key strengths. So think about perhaps 3 strengths here. And also think about your areas for development as well with promoting inclusion. Okay, so think about things that you would like to trial in the future. Perhaps if you've observed a fellow teacher or colleague sort of promoting inclusion in some way, and you would like to trial that approach in the future. Okay, so perhaps a minimum of 2 ways to improve your inclusive practice methods. In terms of word count, we're looking for 500 to 1,000 words for this section. Okay, this is the end of the video. Okay, hopefully this has given you some pointers to answering Unit 6 of the course. Okay, please do send it into the CET team to provide you with feedback. From everyone here at Training, thank you very much for listening to this video.